Hi, this is Tutor Nick P, and this is lesson 19. Today we're going to look at the difference between expert, aficionado, and buff. Expert of course is the most common, but very often we do come across aficionado and buff in articles, and students often ask me, well, what's the difference between these three? Because when you look at the basic definitions, they do seem quite similar. But let's take a look. Let's take a look at some of the meanings, and let's find some of the clear differences in usage, so we would know what situation is better to use one rather than the other. All right. So first, let's look at the example or the definition of expert. Someone who is skilled and has a lot of experience or knowledge on a specific subject. Yeah, kind of a general definition, but I do add some other information to help you. An expert is usually considered to be a professional. So very often expert, it's often related to their job. Maybe they had years of work on this, where they were getting paid, or it was work in a very professional way. So here's the example we give. That pundit is an expert on the economy, because he is a well-known business analyst for many years. Yeah, so he's worked in this field, he's become trusted, he's become respected for many years of experience, a lot of years of knowledge. So that's what we usually say is an expert. So somebody usually more professional, more skilled, they've proven their ability at the skill and with experience. Okay. So let's take a look at aficionado. Aficionado, someone who is very interested in something and knows a lot about it. So again, when you look at the definitions, again, the basic definitions do look a bit similar, but we can add some points to kind of clarify it. An aficionado is someone who is genuinely enthusiastic. Yeah, they're really into this subject or this area of interest. Yeah, so genuinely enthusiastic about and has experience. So they usually are somewhat of a participant in the area that they're excited about, or that's their subject. So experience in a particular subject or activity, often as a hobby or a special interest, but not necessarily in a professional way. So they're really into it, they really follow it. They have learned a lot of knowledge. They're kind of close to the idea of being an expert, but they're not always professional. And I don't know if they're trusted quite as much. All right, so let's take a look at the example. Jack is a jazz aficionado. He has been a huge jazz fan for decades. Again, he may not actually play jazz music, so he's not really particularly a participant. He does probably buy, the CDs, buys the music. He may know the different types of jazz. I'm sure he knows many bands or jazz performers. He could tell you quite a bit about it. But, he may not be a professional himself, but he is very interested in it. He's very enthusiastic about it. All right, let's take a look at the next one. Sandra is a fashion aficionado. She always follows the latest trends in fashion magazines and knows how to put together and judge the latest styles that are in, meaning in fashion. All right, again here, this just might be her hobby or a very strong interest. She has learned a lot about it, over experience of, either reading fashion magazines or watching, maybe fashion shows, people on the catwalk. Maybe she knows a lot of the designers, and she's probably really into dressing in, the latest fashion, the latest styles herself. So she does definitely have some experience in it. But again, she may not actually be professional. She may have never actually had a job in the fashion industry, but she could still be a fashion aficionado. She could still have learned a lot of knowledge about this subject, and she's, again, still very excited, knowledgeable about it. She likes to talk about it, but again, may not actually be professional. She might be able to help a lot of her friends, She might be able to give a lot of good advice to her friends, and helping, pick out outfits and say, no, that's out of fashion, this isn't style. But, like I said, she may not actually be a real professional. Okay, and let's look at the last one, a buff. Someone who is very interested in and knows a lot of detailed, all right, with buff it's often detailed facts about a particular subject. A buff is often not an active participant, yes, is not and in his subject of interest, but has studied and learned information and is knowledgeable about any trivia concerning the topic. So a lot of times you can ask him questions about it, and he's very good at answering the questions. I do give some, like later on I do give some examples, like for example a movie buff. So now we've all seen movies, so we do generally, a lot of us have knowledge about movies, but the movie buff will go a lot further. He'll be able to tell you certain lines that came from a movie, or he'll be able to tell you the year that it came out. He'll be able to tell you who the director is. We don't all, most of us only know the director if it's a very famous director. But he will know a lot of these detailed facts. He'll be able to mention scenes, what somebody said in a particular scene. So he really focuses on a lot of these detailed facts. Same thing with like a sports buff. Probably knows a lot of records, probably studied a lot of records. So you can ask him many questions, and he'll be able to tell you the answer. But just like I said, this is another one where you may not really be a participant. If you're a movie buff, does not mean you're an actor, doesn't mean you participated in it, probably not at all, but still you have a lot of interest in it. You probably don't make your own movies. Sports buff, again, you may or may not play the sport, but if you played it, you probably just played it once in a while as a hobby, definitely not professionally. But you know a lot of information, again, a lot of the detailed information. Car buff, yeah. A car buff, he could probably look at a car and tell you the year, the make, and the model. He might even be able to tell you what kind of engine is in the car. So he's really into the idea of the detailed facts. History buff, yeah. Somebody who, knows a lot about different history, can ask him who were different presidents, when this war was, what happened in this particular year. Again, he knows a lot about the detailed facts. All right, so let's get back to it again. All right, about any common age, yes. Okay, good. All right, so that kind of covers at least the common examples. So the most common examples is movie buff, sports buff, car buff, history buff, and of course there are many more. All right, here are some examples. John is a real sports buff. It is difficult to think up a question that could stump him. Yeah, if you stump somebody, it is usually somebody who's not easy to come up with a question that they can't answer. And that's what you're trying to do. It almost becomes a challenge to think of something, because everything you ask him, he knows it, he knows it, he knows it, he knows it. And you're almost trying to find a tricky one or a hard one to come up with one that would stump him. If he can't answer the question, he's like, oh, I don't know. You finally found one. Sometimes it could be almost fun to try to stump them because they have so much knowledge about this particular area. Okay, let's look at the second example. Mr. Smith is a history buff. He would do well in the category of history on a game show. Yeah, again, that was the idea I told you before, that buffs are kind of into trivia. So again, the same thing. Difficult to stump him. Many questions that anybody could think of about history, he knows the answer. He's really good at this. But again, just because you're a history buff doesn't mean it's related to any job. Like for example, you're not a historian. A historian would be somebody who could be considered an expert in history because it's related to his profession. He studies, he writes about it, he talks about it. So, but a buff is more really just about the knowledge and learning it. It's probably more out of an interest. It's probably more for fun. Okay, and at the very last part, I tried to find one where you could kind of think of them, you know, using each of the words. Like, just like I said, with a historian could be considered a history expert. We could say like a wine expert. A wine expert, again, is probably related to a job. Maybe you're a professional wine taster in these wine contests. You know, you're one of those people that, you know, put the wine in their mouth and swish it around. You know, you could tell something maybe about the ingredients or the taste, and you would be really good at judging wine. Or if you're a wine expert, you might be a wine grower. You may have, you know, the knowledge about, you know, how to grow it, what the soil must be like, you know, the best season for growing it, things like that. You're a wine expert. What would if we said wine aficionado? Again, a wine aficionado, again, may not be related to a job. You might be like a wine collector. You might be somebody who's into wine. You probably drink a lot of wine. You've tasted it. You might even be able to recognize a lot of wine. Or, you know, you might be able to, you know, recognize the special, fancy, expensive wine. You know, like somebody said, that's a 1963 Bordeaux. You know, you might know that sort of stuff. And you're really into collecting it. You're really into tasting it. But again, you may not actually have a profession in it. And that's why I put a question mark next to wine buff. I don't know if we would really talk about wine buffs, because I don't think many people just study the details about wine. Maybe a wine aficionado might have some knowledge like a buff, but, you know, again, the buff is just more interested in facts, in his interest. Like I said, usually the buff is not necessarily an active participant, but a wine aficionado is kind of a participant. He does drink the wine, he has experience with the wine, but again, probably not as likely to be his job. Okay, I hope that helps, because, you know, this, I hope that kind of clarifies where you're a little more likely to use one of these words, where you're more likely to use expert and aficionado and buff as opposed to the others. Thank you for your time.